Привit moi druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm a professor who tries to help you understand what's going on in Ukraine and the context surrounding Ukraine. So, I uh, I told you in my last video yesterday that I'll stop talking about American politics and how it informs this. I was just trying to help you understand some things about how, for example, the Republican Party is not monolithic, and there's a lot of support for Ukraine in that. But then this happened, and I have to talk about this. I was like, oh man, I just told them yesterday I wasn't going to. And I put out a poll in the community and said, so Ron DeSantis just did a U-turn on Ukraine. I just promised I would stop talking about American politics for a while. Do you want to hear about this, or should I move on as I planned earlier? 91% of almost 100 people said yes, they want to hear about this. So, okay. And a little bit further down, I also, the other day, put this out on the forum on the community channel. If you are conservative and you wish to express your displeasure to Ron DeSantis, as I just did, here's the link. And I put the link out and I said, I would argue that liberals should probably leave this alone. Now, there might have been a misunderstanding. Some people were like, hey, you don't think I should do it? No. So here's the thing. If you can write Ron DeSantis and say, please support Ukraine and just stop there. If you're from the left, that's great. That's helpful. But I would have a hard time just saying one thing to say Nancy Pelosi or somebody else, right? So, and if you try to get into it, it's going to repel more than help if you come to it from a leftist perspective of why he ought to do it. So it's best not to do this. Now, what might be helpful after you watch this is go to the community tab, click on that, and write him and thank him for his changing his stance on Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. That will actually be helpful. So if 1,000 of you do that, he's going to get this message. Just like, well, okay, if you go and click on that, you get to this form. I filled it in the other day, and essentially what I told him was, look, I was hoping that you'd be the alternative Republican candidate to Donald Trump. After what you said about Ukraine, I'm going to have to keep looking for a candidate elsewhere. I hope you reconsider. That's pretty much all I said. That was the essence of what I said. And it's not just me. There are half dozen of you on this forum that said that you did it. And I'm pretty sure that around the country, there are other conservatives like myself that were doing the same thing. And I think that has, over time, you accumulate enough, it makes a difference. Okay, so if you're not familiar with what I've been talking about, let me give you a quick update, and you can go back and you can watch these yourself. I would highly recommend that you start here if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, the Republicans on Ukraine, because Tucker Carlson kicked this off with a questionnaire, and DeSantis was one of those that answered this questionnaire, and then this is what got this going. And DeSantis said things that were more toward Trump than more toward the middle or pro-Ukraine than maybe we had hoped. He got a lot of backlash from all these Republican senators who then said, you know, like, this isn't cool, we can't support that, including Marco Rubio from his own state. And then we talked about this a little bit. I talked about it with Georgie. And then over here, I was unpacking how Republicans are not, in this Republicans in Ukraine video here, how Republicans are not monolithic. They are divided into a few different camps, and most conservatives support Ukraine, and most populists are in that I don't want to get involved kind of camp. I also said this, and this was really interesting, and thank you so much, community. I really appreciate your responses. I said, I don't understand when I'm looking at these polls, because I showed like 4 different polls. I said, I don't understand why liberals are so supportive of Ukraine. Historically, liberals are the doves and conservatives are the hawks, but liberals support it more. And after going around with a few times with a number of you, and I so appreciate you, it came down to like, well, we have more empathy for the victim. Clearly, Ukraine's a victim. I can see that. Ukraine's a victim. And it made me think, and this is how we summarize that. And you can go back and you can look at this in the comments below. But this is how we summarized it. And I'll give you an analogy. My wife and I watch the same TV show, and I'm kind of a little bored when it's like the romance part of the show, and I'm like, oh, good, something's blowing up, and I'm tuning in. And she's doing exactly the opposite. She's tuning out with the blowing up stuff and the guns and whatever else. And when there's the romance part, she perks up and she's paying attention. It's almost like that with Ukraine. And remember, the last thing that I showed you was the poll that showed this higher support from Republicans saying that Russia is a serious national interest that we have to watch out for. A strong Russia could be very bad. There's higher Republican support than Democrat support because it was a question asked differently. So at any rate, I use that analogy to say this. I think liberals tend to look at this, and this is an oversimplification, but I think it's fair. Liberals look at Ukraine being invaded by Russia, and they're looking at the victim saying, that's terrible, what's happening to the victim. And the bully's there, but the bully is almost secondary to the victim. Republicans, I think, conservatives at least, come to it from the other side. They see this bully, recognize the threat. We recognize more threats than liberals, and other academics have actually pointed that out. You can see this in polling as well. Conservatives look at the threat of Russia being a bully of its neighbor, and it's not so much bullying Ukraine or bullying this country or that country, but they look at that and go, no, that shouldn't stand. We have to stop that. And we do see Ukraine as well as like they're the innocent victim, but we see the bully first, where liberals, I think, see the victim first. And I think that's an oversimplification, but it's a fair way of understanding how we've both come to this a little bit differently, but to unite over the same cause. Okay, at any rate, let me keep going. So here's the best article that I saw about what was going on. It was in The Guardian. I read a half dozen of these, and this is the best one, so I'm going to cover a number of things in here. So Ron DeSantis has reversed his position on Ukraine after facing widespread criticism for calling the Russian invasion a territorial dispute. He also said it was not in America's vital interest, where he got a lot of pushback for those kind of statements. Speaking to Fox Nation, he was talking to Piers Morgan. He said his territorial dispute remark had been mischaracterized. Now, I don't know that it has been mischaracterized, but he sure wants to clarify. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, because even yesterday I got in trouble with something that I said, and I had to qualify of, hey, I didn't mean this, I meant that. And it seemed perfectly clear to me, but it wasn't perfectly clear to my audience. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's put the best face on it that we can and be kind in that way. Obviously, Russia invaded. That was wrong, he said. They invaded Crimea and took that in 2014. That was wrong. Okay, that's a pretty fair statement. DeSantis also called Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, a war criminal. Great, I'm glad he did that. That's a good step forward. Now, he's not full-throated on everything, but these are good steps. Now, the International Criminal Court has issued a warrant for Putin's arrest. Though the U.S. is not a member of the ICC, Joe Biden said the move was justified. DeSantis has a different opinion. And this is a pretty strong conservative opinion about how we see this. He said, I don't know about that route, but I do think he should be held accountable. I said essentially the same thing. I don't want to see Putin stand trial at The Hague. I want to see Putin stand trial in Kyiv, where the damage was done. Conservatives tend to think more in terms of the nations in which the things happened rather than the international overarching body of something. We're a little bit skeptical about those kind of things. But nonetheless, we all want to see Putin held responsible. Okay, he made his territorial dispute remark last week in an answer to the Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and we already talked about that. One Republican strategist turned anti-Trump campaigner said that, quote, DeSantis is a conventional politician. Let's stop there. Politicians react to what their constituents want because they want to stay in power. This is simply James Buchanan, public choice theory. He's a Nobel Prize winner for essentially coming to the conclusion that politicians want to stay in power. That's their highest motive. So that's good, because that means that when the public reacts, they will do the will of the public more than they otherwise would, because they want to stay in power. Okay, let's keep going. DeSantis is a conventional politician. They're polling like mad and found that his Ukraine position is unpopular with general election Republicans. Also, donors hate it. Now, it's not just general election Republicans. There's a good fraction of the conservative base that really, really hates it. But also donors hate it. So this is kind of a lose-lose. And he can actually distinguish himself from Trump if he moves away from that. And I hope that that's what I see happening. Regarding his territorial dispute remark, DeSantis said, quote, what I'm referring to is where the fighting is going on now, which is that eastern border region of Donbass and then Crimea. And you have a situation where Russia has had that, I don't think legitimately, but they had. There's a lot of ethnic Russians there. That sounds a little bit too close to something I don't like, with a lot of ethnic Russians there. The ethnic Russians that are there, most of them, the polling has dropped from 20% support to single digits and the low single digits of that. So that's what some difficult fighting, and that's what I was referring to. And so it wasn't that I thought Russia had a right to that. And so if I should have made more clear, I could have done it. But I think that the larger point is, okay, Russia is not showing the ability to take over Ukraine, to topple the government, or certainly threaten NATO. That's a good thing. I'm not sure exactly what he said there, but he's kind of trying to backtrack. At least he's trying to backtrack, even if it's terrible. By the way, public choice theory also means, because politicians are trying to do what the people want, that even if he full-throatedly doesn't desire it deep in his bones, even if he still does it, like supports Ukraine just because the people do, that's still a good outcome. Okay, let's keep going. Now, he's a little weak here. I just don't think that that's a sufficient interest for us to escalate more involvement. I would not want to see American troops involved there, but the idea that I think somehow Russia was justified in invading, that's nonsense. Okay, so he's kind of trying to have it both ways, but nobody wants to see American troops there. Biden doesn't want to see American troops there. That's not the issue. So there is this Georgetown public policy professor who said this. He's critical of Biden, but it's not clear on how his position on Ukraine is different. Now, this presents a real dilemma for what DeSantis has to do. DeSantis has to show that he's different from Trump, but he also has to show that he's different from Biden. And Trump has made himself clearly different from Biden. So is that a winning strategy? I hope not. But for the Republican candidate to say, I'm doing what he's doing too, it's a very tough sell for the politician. Now, I think it's the right thing to do to say that they're supportive. I think they should say they're even more supportive than Biden. But okay, that's where we are, and that's the practicality of that. DeSantis also told Fox Nation that Ukrainians, quote, have the right to that territory, adding, if I could snap my fingers, I'd give it back to Ukraine 100%. So that is a good step walk back. It's not all the way, but it's the right direction. But the reality is what Americans' involvement is in terms of escalating with more weapons and certainly ground troops, I think would be a mistake. Everyone says that. There's no issue there. Everybody agrees on that. So, except for Lindsey Graham, who's like hardcore. So that was the point I was trying to make, but Russia was wrong to invade. They were wrong to take Crimea. Okay, so he's actually moved farther away from Trump than where he was just a week ago, and I think the pressure that he got, the pushback that he got, is helping him move that direction. Okay, so again, if you want to see that, go back and see these other videos. I want to show you a couple of other articles. Here's Lindsey Graham. Just a couple hours ago, Graham praises DeSantis for labeling Putin a war criminal, and it goes on. I'm not going to belabor that particular article. This was in The Hill. The Hill, if you're not familiar with it, here's another article from The Hill. The Hill is a very well-respected American journal about politics. Okay, so here, Trump lashes out at DeSantis over the Piers Morgan interview on Fox Nation. Okay, so Trump says, while I'm fighting against radical left lunatics, persecutors, and unfair prosecutors who want to destroy us all, Ron DeSanctimonious, he's given him a name like Sleepy Joe Biden or Corrupt Hillary, Ron DeSanctimonious is not working for the people of Florida, as he should be. He's too busy chatting with a ratings challenge TV host from England, desperately trying to rescue his failing campaign. But it's my fault, I put him there. Well, I'm not sure if he's talking about Piers Morgan, who was on The Apprentice in an early season, or if he was talking about DeSantis, because he actually did help DeSantis. Trump endorsed DeSantis when he ran for governor in Florida back in 2018. The move the former president has since said he probably regrets. But here's what I want to focus on. A range of political polling has indicated DeSantis could be a top challenger. So if we click on the political polling, what we come to is this. Trump widens his lead in 2024 race, according to a Quinnipiac poll, and it's a very reputable poll. So here's the front runner right now. Donald Trump, 46%. Ron DeSantis, 32%. That's not too shabby, and he's not even declared yet. Okay, Nikki Haley, she is all full-throated support for Ukraine, and she just kicked off her campaign recently with only 5%, but she's legit. She has both the credit as a governor, so she has domestic experience under her belt, and she was the ambassador to the UN, so she has some foreign policy experience. So she actually is pretty well positioned to be moving forward. But so you say, oh, Trump, 46%. How could they be like that? Well, there's only a couple declared candidates, and it's too early to freak out. A number of you keep going, Dr. Gerdes, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. But I can't see how Trump can't win. Slow down. Let's look at how this works. Let's look to the 2015 primary season and look at a poll. So here's an article from NBC News. Nearly half of Republicans say Trump is hurting GOP's image. Okay, let's look at the date. It is August 3rd of 2015. We're not yet to August of the similar cycle yet, and let's look at who was the front runner. Here's the percentage of GOP primary voters who say they could see themselves voting for each candidate. Who was first? Rubio. That was my guy. Bush, number 2. Walker. You don't even probably know who Walker is if you're not in America. Cruz, Huckabee, Carson, Trump. So he was number 7 a year and a half out. So a lot could change between now and then, and it probably will. So that's what I want to leave you with. I want to encourage you that a lot can change in American politics. And I think that DeSantis actually moved his position is very encouraging. Even if he doesn't believe it in his bones, if it becomes part of his platform, he'll obey his party's platform over time, and you can probably rest easy if that's the case. If it's Trump, that could be a whole different problem set. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. Thank you for your time. I hope that clarifies and helps you understand what's really going on within American politics related to Ukraine. I promise you, I'm not going to bring up stuff about politics to talk about tax credits or school choice or socialized medicine or whatever. Only things that relate to Ukraine. That's all. That's what I'm interested in here on this channel. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.